Welcome to Hacking Your ADHD. I'm your host, William Kerb, and I have ADHD. On this podcast, I dig into the tools, tactics, and best practices to help you work with your ADHD brain. Hey team, this week we're diving into another listener question.
Hi William, I'm Emily and I live in Chicago, Illinois. I'm a lifelong gardener and love growing flowers, veggies, houseplants, and more. As someone with ADHD, plant care is something I either hyperfixate on or procrastinate and ignore because of all the things that my plants need to thrive. For some reason, creating routines around plant care has been really challenging for me. I'm wondering if you have any ideas for how to make gardening and plant care more enjoyable so that my plants and I feel less stressed. Thanks for making my favorite ADHD podcast.
Hey Emily, I love this question because there are always these things that we want to do that we find so difficult to get into unless we're falling into hyperfocus. And really, I think that this addresses a key piece of ADHD. Getting started can be the hardest part, even on the things that we want to do. So I'm going to expand this into talking about more than just gardening, although I'll try to keep in your specifics in mind as I go. There are these things that we love to do yet find ourselves unable to do consistently. For a lot of hobbies, that isn't always too much of a problem, but with plant care, well, I think we've all had a plant or two that we've lost because we've forgotten to water it for quite a while. Honestly, as I started answering this question, I figured that I'd be adding a couple of other questions into this episode. But as I got going, there were a lot of things I was able to get into, from the different types of fun, to blocking out fun on our calendars, to how we can work on lowering the resistance to getting started. So while gardening might not be your thing, there's still going to be a lot in this episode that you can get out of because we cover a lot of ground. If you'd like to send me your own question to answer on the show, feel free to head over to hackingYourADHD.com/contact and click the orange button. If you'd like to follow along on the show notes page, you can find that at hackingYourADHD.com/189. I also wanted to let you know about the Hacking Your ADHD newsletter, Any and All Distractions. And that's what this newsletter is all about. In it, I bring you the top things of the week that have caught my attention from the world of ADHD and beyond. If that sounds like something you'd like in your inbox, just head over to hackingYourADHD.com/newsletter and sign up. All right, keep on listening to find out how long your plants can really go between waterings. You're right on the money with the idea of creating routines around your plant care, but of course, building routines are hard. I find that it is especially hard for me to build routines around things that I enjoy doing. Not because the enjoyment part, but more from the baggage I have around the idea of when I should be doing fun stuff and taking breaks. For me, I'm often more focused on work-related tasks when I'm planning, and the fun stuff simply comes off as something a little extra I can do in my day. But this is a terrible way to think about how we're allocating our time, and it's definitely something I'm personally still working on quite a bit. So I'm here to remind you, and of course myself, that it's important to prioritize the things that bring joy to your life. That means it's important to build these routines in a proactive way. One of the reasons that this approach is so important is that if we look at how we spend our time throughout the day, we're going to find that we do in fact have a lot of time where we're not being productive. Having cut my teeth on these topics in the productivity blog sphere, my initial thoughts are about how I can reclaim that time into productive ventures. How I should be setting up more app blocks on my phone and trying to eke out even more work out of every hour. Of course, that's not the answer. What we're really seeing here is our natural need to take breaks and how we need to insert fun throughout our day. I'm way less likely to find myself procrastinating if I know I have fun stuff planned later in the day. If I know I just have another solid 4-hour block of work for myself, well, my brain's going to find ways for me to take those breaks that I need. And often those breaks aren't even going to be all that refreshing because I'm still not really doing the things that I want to do. This means that the first things we want to look at is we want to put gardening into our schedule. We want to block off time that is protected, meaning that it isn't something that we just easily schedule over. This is time that we deem important, time that we've blocked out for something that we want to do. It's easy to think we'll just find time for the fun things, but I rarely ever find myself without a lot to do. So trying to find time for something that's going to take effort rarely happens. And these rewarding fun activities usually do take effort. I think it's important that we distinguish between type 1 and type 2 fun. Type 1 fun is things that are fun at the moment that we really enjoy. This would be something like playing a video game or enjoying a good meal. Type 2 fun is the stuff that we enjoy in retrospect, but may be hard or stressful at the moment. This is more like hiking a difficult trail or learning a new skill. With that in mind, there are also those who have the classification of type 3 fun, which is neither fun in the present nor in the past. So, not fun. I don't think we really need examples of this kind of fun because really what we're talking about is just not having fun. But I think having that last category helps when we think about this scale of fun in terms of a spectrum. Instead of just seeing something as type 1 or type 2, we can think about how there are those things that will be enjoyable in the moment, but not in retrospect. Things that are terrible at the time and take a while to recover from, but perhaps immensely gratifying as a story you share around the campfire a few years later. With ADHD, we tend to gravitate towards a lot of type 1 activities because they bring that immediate dopamine to our systems. But that doesn't always lead to long-term satisfaction, so it's important that we make sure we're engaging with type 2 fun as well. This doesn't mean that we have to do things that we don't enjoy doing, because of course we don't want to stray into the territory of type 3 fun, which of course is no fun at all. With gardening, I imagine that you experience both type 1 and type 2 fun, but it probably skews more towards the type 2. This can make it hard to engage when there are plenty of other type 1 activities that are easier to start right in front of you. With this in mind, I think one of the most important steps we can take is working on decreasing resistance to starting and increasing fun in the moment. As we discussed earlier, ADHD can make starting anything more difficult, even the things that we want to do. This is especially true when we're thinking about something that is going to take a bit to get into. This reminds me that we should also talk a bit about the 3 parts of a task here, because I think that plays into how we're able to engage with what we're doing. Often when we're thinking about a task, we're only thinking about the doing part. But in reality, a task is made up of the setup, the doing, and the cleanup. The setup is whatever it is we need to do to get ready for what we're doing. Then we do the task, and importantly, we have a step where we have our cleanup. Now, I want to be clear that cleanup isn't just about cleaning. It's about setting ourselves up so that the next time that we want to do this task or something in this space, we're going to be ready to do it, so that setup next time doesn't involve cleaning up the mess we left from last time. This is important to consider when we're talking about task initiation, because if we don't think about what we need to do to get set up, it can make starting even harder when we realize that we still need to do a few more things before we can even get going. And now we've killed our momentum to get started. On the back end, we should need to make sure that we're building in that cleanup time so that we're not making the startup even harder next time. But back to our task initiation bit. If we know that getting started is going to be hard for us, then we can try and figure out ways to make getting started easier. We can put our gardening stuff in a place that is easier for us to get to. We can plan on just doing a little bit and seeing if that will get us fired up to do more. Whatever it takes to get you over that initial hurdle of starting. With that initial hurdle, we can also consider what would make things more enjoyable. This is going to sound strange, but I've really gotten back into listening to music while I do chores, which has been surprisingly helpful. And I say this is strange just because typically when I'm doing chores, I'm more focused on listening to a podcast or an audiobook. So I just find it funny that switching up the kind of audio I've been listening to has really helped, because of course listening to music is a classic way to increase enjoyment, and it feels funny to say that I'm getting back into it. Another thing that can make an activity like this more enjoyable is doing it with someone else, either in person or virtually. While I've been working on this script, I've been body doubling online, which has been great for helping me keep on track. But there's no reason you can't use these same tools for following through with the fun things in life. Remember, we're putting this stuff on our calendar because it's important, and that means that we can use tools like body doubling because, again, this stuff is in fact important. Now, before we wrap up, one place I think is also worth exploring here is that hyperfocus you talked about, which can be great when we really need to work on something, but isn't something that we always want to be engaged in. We can have some resistance to starting a task if we have the fear of engaging in hyperfocus at inopportune times. I know I have to be considerate about the type of tasks I'm engaging in when I have, say, 10 minutes to kill before going to pick up my kids. Definitely don't want to fall into hyperfocus and be late on that one. This is another place where accountability works great. Text your friend, hey, I'm going to be doing a little bit of gardening for 30 minutes. I'll text you when I'm done. Call me if you don't hear from me. Or again, body doubling with someone online usually means that there's going to be a cutoff point when you've got to stop. We also want to be setting up our own systems to help us out here as well. Timers are a great option here as long as they can get your attention. It also might be good to have something that will alert you when you have 5 to 10 minutes to go, so then you can start cleaning up and then have another go off when it's time to be done. While working on this, I also asked my wife if she had any ADHD tips specifically for gardening and plant care, so we'll finish up with a few of those. First on the list is to try and focus on plants that are hard to kill. Succulents can be a great option here with their low water needs. Similarly, we had a peace lily that lived for years despite our inconsistent watering. Sure, it would wilt and look completely dead, but that was really just our reminder to water it, and then it would perk right back up. Additionally, there are self-watering pots that can help relieve some of that stress of daily watering. And way back when, I had an episode where I recommended the Toddy app for keeping track of household chores, and that's TODY. This can be a great place to have general reminders about plant care and reminders for bigger, more seasonal things. While we use the Toddy app, there are plenty of other great apps that are more specific to plant care that you can use to help remind about what needs to happen in your garden. And talking about seasons here, one thing my wife mentioned is to watch out for impulse buying plants from big retail chains like Home Depot or Lowe's. They tend to roll out their plants based on a national calendar rather than what's in season locally, so make sure to check what is in season in your area before buying. And finally, remember to put on sunscreen before going out because nothing throws off your gardening plans like a bad sunburn. We want to make things easier, and that certainly would make them harder. I hope this helps, and thanks for writing in. Thanks again to Emily for your question. And if you'd like to leave me your own question, feel free to go to hackingyyouradhd.com/contact and click the orange button. Before you go though, let's do a quick rundown of today's top tips. 1. Block off dedicated time for gardening in your calendar to ensure it's prioritized and protected. Our brains are going to make time for us to take off regardless, so be proactive and choose how you want to spend that time. 2. To balance enjoyment and satisfaction, differentiate between Type 1, immediate fun, and Type 2, retrospective fun, activities. 3. You can break down tasks into 3 parts: setup, doing, and cleanup, to reduce resistance and ensure a smoother start and finish to whatever you're trying to get done. Alright, that's it. Thanks for listening. I'd love to hear what you thought of this episode. Feel free to connect with me over at hackingyyouradhd.com/contact. If you'd like links or to read this episode's transcript, you can go to the show notes page at hackingyyouradhd.com/189. And now for your moment of dad. I call it an elevator, but my British friend calls it a lift. I guess we were just raised differently.